it impacted my life beyond what I could ever thought. And I've never even met these people.
Those people who tell you you're the worst person ever, that you ruin their life.
And their Christmas or Mother's Day or whatever. You might be in the trenches of what's going on in the season, but ultimately, like, if you can pay attention to that and you can connect with someone like that, it was just so cool. The ornament brought her to tears. Everyone was just so ecstatic, and it was just such a beautiful moment. And yeah, I don't even care if they ever order from us again. It was the best moment. It was the highlight of the whole business, quite honestly, thus far. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Grace-Filled Growth Podcast with your hosts, Lauren and Connor. We're a husband and wife team who started selling on Etsy with zero experience, zero design background, and a whole lot of late nights and early mornings. Fast forward to today, and we've done just shy of $2 million in sales on Etsy, left our 9-to-5 jobs, and built a business that gives us freedom, flexibility, and a purpose. In this episode, we'll be talking about customer service. One of the least talked about topics, but honestly, one of the most important. Whether you're dealing with refund requests, angry buyers, or you're just overwhelmed by a flood of messages during Q4, this episode will help you create a strategy that protects your peace, your profits, and your time. We'll share real stories, practical tips, and the exact systems we use to handle everything from 1-star reviews to training our team to speak on our behalf. So let's jump into it.
All right, guys, welcome to the customer service episode. We thought that this would be a good topic to touch on, especially leading up to the Q4 season. We know it can get very crazy in terms of customer service, all things, tons of messages, just refund requests, people wondering when they're going to get their items in time for the holidays and things like that. So we figured we'd share insights and just prepare you guys for the upcoming season. And so we wanted to start with kind of what to expect on Etsy. Maybe some of you guys are newer to Etsy in general. Maybe you have sold on other platforms, or maybe this is your first time doing business in general. And so what we wanted to touch on is Etsy in general, I think, compared to other marketplaces, maybe like Amazon or even your own website like Shopify, or if you were selling on TikTok, all the different places that you could sell. I think Etsy stands out from the rest of those in the fact that customers really perceive Etsy as like small business. And so because of that, they realize that they're interacting with likely an individual, a small business. And so they're way more likely to send frequent messages and have that more personal experience. And so because of that, what ends up happening is you do get a lot more interaction with customers, more back and forth. You do have a lot more messages that you do need to respond to. And that's what our hope is with this episode here, that we can equip you guys to handle that volume of messages that usually increases pretty significantly come the Q4 season. And so one thing we wanted to touch on right away is just the importance of timely responses to messages. And so I know it's been a huge part of our business and a huge way that we've felt that we've stood out from our competition, and just being able to respond immediately to messages. And I think I'll let you touch on it a little bit, but one thing that comes to mind for me is just like always having in the back of my head, like when someone's reaching out to our shop asking a question about potentially ordering, they're probably reaching out to 3 or 4 other shops at the same time. And so if you can be the first one to respond and give them that time of day and that attention, your conversion rate's going to go up significantly, and you're way more likely to close that sale just because you responded first compared to the other shops that they messaged. And so, yeah, do you want to maybe touch on that a little more?
Yeah, I think something that really stood out to us is how, like Connor said, reaching out to the customer right away. And what we mean by that is not necessarily having an automatic reply. And so I know that that's an option on Etsy where you can have this beautiful message and it goes immediately to the customer and they get that response, right? But the issue with that is, like Connor was saying, you miss an opportunity to, one, communicate with the customer and help them solve what they're looking for, like their needs, or they have questions about a listing you have. Having that automatic response eliminates all of that. And so that's a problem because our goal is to be able to sell, right? And sell your products. And so I think it's so important that you or someone on your team, you are physically responding to them and you are giving them, you're serving them. We're huge on serving people. And so we view customer service just the same way, right? And so it's so important to not automate that process. As much as it feels like, oh, what a breath of fresh air. I don't have to respond in 24 hours that Etsy has us on. That threshold, it's really important to, stay on top of it yourself or with your team, and provide them the message that they deserve. And so I think if you can do anything to serve yourself and to serve your customer, it's not to shortcut that. It's so important. And honestly, if we're being honest these days, everybody's on their phones. At least we're always guilty of it. It's always in our pocket or in our purse or in the car. And if you have the Etsy app, you can easily respond to messages. It's just like a text message at that point. And that's what we found. You can reply instantly. So I think that's something that's really big for us is we don't automate that because a real person is reaching out and a real response is what they're looking for. And if you can be the first one to answer their question and serve them and guide them, your chances of conversion is almost 100%, I would say. Pretty high, right?
Yeah. If someone's reaching out with a request like that, they're very likely they have a high intent to buy. And so if you're the first one to respond, especially if it's a custom request, and you're willing to work with them and go the extra mile, you have a huge conversion rate increase because of that. And so the other thing I want to highlight, so you mentioned the automated messages, and just to go a little deeper on that. So a lot of times what we see other sellers do, so Etsy gives you the opportunity, there's a feature in Etsy where you can turn on automated messages, maybe on the weekends or while you're away, you can turn on this automated response so that when someone reaches out to you, it'll send a message like, hey, we're not available right now. We'll be back working Monday morning and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And by giving that response, you don't get dinged by Etsy for not responding within 24 hours, but you don't really respond to the customer's exact question by doing that. And so I think that's really what we're highlighting and encouraging you guys maybe not to use that feature. I think, in my opinion, it's kind of lazy. I know there's definitely times where you may want to be able to step away and there may be a time and place for those automated messages, but I think especially as a newer shop, it's something I would definitely recommend avoiding. And just put in the extra time, be willing to go the extra mile and try and respond as quick as possible. If we've seen it time and time again, if you can respond in 30 seconds or 1 minute, so many customers are like, wow, that's amazing. You responded so fast. Thank you. I never get this response from Etsy shops when I message them. And so just that little thing allows you to stand out from the crowd so much.
And you don't have to reply like that every time. We have a work-life balance that we've implemented for our lives, but the ultimate goal of this and the ultimate point of our conversation right now is it's so important to be timely with your responses. If it's a couple hours, if it's whatever, but it's so important to get back to them as quickly as possible because they're currently looking, right? And so if you want to lock in that deal or that sale, then you're the person that helps them enter that, right? And so I think that's so important.
Yeah, and one thing I'll highlight, and I think it transitions us well to the next point, I think there's a distinction as your message volume goes up every day. I think you can start to pick and choose which messages you are more timely with, right? And so, for example, the message requests that are for new business, right? People asking about a potential order. In my mind, those are the ones you want to prioritize. If you can bring new business to your shop and close those deals, those are the most important. If there's other messages like order issues or they're wondering where their order is, those are things where maybe you set aside a time each day, each morning, and you handle those types of messages. But throughout the day, as you see those new business requests or how do I order this? Can you make this adjustment? Can you personalize it in this way? Those are the ones where if you respond right away, you can increase that conversion rate significantly.
Totally.
Yeah. And so we wanted to touch a little bit more on Q4, like we said, because that's when honestly the messages can go really, really crazy. And so we wanted to share a little bit of like what you guys can expect. And so I don't want to scare you guys first off, right? It can get overwhelming, but just like we've talked about on past episodes, it's likely not going to happen overnight, especially if you're a brand new shop, right? The daily messages will scale with the number of orders, right? So as you slowly build that momentum and gain traction leading into that Christmas season, expect for the message volume to increase pretty much around the same rate. And so, yeah, it can definitely get crazy, but I would say at this point, if you're brand new, don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it scare you and prevent you from pushing forward. I did want to share one story. So we talked about on one of our earlier podcasts, I think the first episode, if you guys haven't seen that, definitely go back and watch it. We share like pretty much our whole journey, our whole story with Etsy from start to finish and how we got where we are. But in that podcast, I talked about the time when I first quit my job, my engineering job, and that was last Christmas season. So the end of last October was when I stepped away, and pretty much right after leaving my job, like we stepped into that. We were in the Q4 season and approaching November. And so the order volume was picking up substantially. And with that, all the messages. And so I didn't even have time to really like adjust to my new lifestyle. I was working more hours than I was before because it just got so crazy overnight with the order volume and the messages. And I remember like for most of that season, every morning, like I'd wake up and the first thing I would do is respond to messages, and it would be like 100+ messages every day. And it would take like 2 to 3 hours. And that was just to clear the messages before I could even really start the day, before I could help with processing orders or anything else. And so, yeah, it gets really crazy.
I remember when he would respond to messages, I'd be at work and he'd text me and he'd be doing them and then he'd finish them and then have multiple orders. And again, we're so grateful for all of this. We're just shedding some light on the journey that we entered when we decided to quit our jobs. But I remember when you would finish the messages and then like 20 more orders would come in. So grateful for them, but it was so overwhelming because you'd catch up on one thing and then you were behind on another thing. And I just think, yeah, that was interesting to navigate. But yeah, you did a good job with those messages.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. I think like one of the things I've found is, and we'll touch on this more later on in this episode, but it can really like ruin your day.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you let it, especially some of those like negative messages that you will inevitably get, and the tough customers.
People can be mean.
Yeah, so mean.
Ruthless. Yeah.
And especially when you're starting your day with that, it can like really put a damper on the rest of the day and just like completely throw you off. And so we'll talk a little bit more later about like how to deal with that and how to not let it ruin your day. But I think I completely relate if anyone's going through that, where you feel like completely down because of messages you're getting and just like rude, mean customers. And so can completely relate, especially during a time when you're so overwhelmed and just so busy in general.
And you're just trying to do your best ultimately. Right. And it can be really hard when someone just rips you a new one and you aren't really prepared for that. Because it's another person doing that to you. And you're like, what the heck? Like so uncalled for. But we've kind of overcome that. It still stings every time. It doesn't get old. We still deal with it, but we've matured in that. And so we'll shed some light on how we've matured and how we've been able to develop that skill to get over that little hurdle, even though it still is a hurdle. But we've developed a skill to be able to get over that we can shed some light on for you guys later on in this episode.
Yeah. And I think in our opinions, we're really confident in our customer service approach at this point. And we talked about it a little earlier in this episode, just like the timeliness. That's one way to stand out. But customer service in general is a huge way to stand out in your business. And we're very confident that the things that we've implemented, the things we've learned over time is a big reason for the number of orders we've been able to do consistently and how it's just allowed our shop to continue to grow. And I think during Q4, it's even more important to have some of those things in place. And so having a plan in terms of your customer service is super, super important. I think especially when it comes to like refunds, when it comes to misprints, when it comes to, hey, the package looks lost in the mail or it's delayed, like having a solid plan, knowing exactly what you say in those cases is so important.
Yeah. I remember we went through a peak season. I believe it was Mother's Day season that we first encountered this, and we had to learn on our feet. We had to learn quickly because we were going to run into issues of a lot of refunds, or we were going to be able to navigate it and avoid that. And obviously the goal was to avoid refunds because that's your business. And a lot of the time you can avoid it. And how you do that is by communicating to your customer. But the biggest thing with that is like listening to them and like stepping into their shoes. I know it seems silly that you're like, well, this is just messages back and forth, but really like take a step back and realize that, hey, this is actually a human that is looking for their order for someone special that they're trying to give it to, and realize that, hey, yeah, this is actually so frustrating. Like it just is reality, right? And so if you can take that step back and realize that like that's a human being on the other side of it, and you can relate to them. And so what I'm saying with that is if they're frustrated with shipping delays, if they're frustrated with how an order came, maybe it wasn't top quality, it happens, it's part of life. Or maybe they're upset with like, I don't know, a misprint, they got the wrong item. I don't know. It could be many things, but the biggest thing that we've seen, and it's helped avoid a lot of refunds and issues for us, is side with them. Like understand that, hey, I understand this is so frustrating. It's frustrating for me as well. We're doing everything that we can to help make this right for you. And, you know, whatever the issue is, this is what we're doing. And so you're siding with them on their frustration, and then you're helping come up with that solution, right? And so it really just simmers things down, and it just lets them know like, okay, I'm not alone on this island. You know, this person gets it too. They're not just trying to take my money. But that was huge for us.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying there, to summarize it in one word, is just empathy. And I think that's like probably at the center of our whole approach for customer service. And everything Lauren's saying is true, right? Realize they're a real person. They are frustrated for whatever reason or upset. And how can you empathize with them, put yourself in their shoes, and really feel what they're going through and serve them in the best way possible. And I think at the same time, while you do that, like realizing that they're a human, they're a real person, like be vulnerable yourself and be open and truthful. And by doing that, you share with them that you're just a small business. You're just a person on the other side. Oftentimes it's just one person running an Etsy shop, right? And so a lot of customers don't realize that, right? They're used to shopping on Amazon or online other places, and they're used to big business, right?
Instant gratification.
Right. And so the more that you can be vulnerable and just level yourself with them, like, hey, I'm doing my best here. Like, I'm going to check on this right away for you. Like, just share all the details that you can in a truthful way that puts yourself on that same playing field. Like you're just another person just like them, trying to serve them. And the more that you can do that, the more that people will also give you that grace and be more patient with you and more understanding. And there are so many amazing customers out there.
Totally.
When you do open up that other side, when you don't, I think a lot of people in general, like they want these like super professional responses, and like they'll go to chat GPT and like, hey, could you write up a professional sounding response to this message? And I think honestly, like it's the wrong approach. Like just respond naturally as a person, sound more human than like big business and like the PC approach.
Yeah.
Like I think it's hurting you because that's not what Etsy is. People are there for a personalized experience.
Limits your ability to build that skill, right?
Yeah.
And so just going off of that, when you're in a heated moment, let's just say you get a bad message and it really is ticking you off and you're just super frustrated and heated and you're like, I can't believe this, blah, blah, blah. Then leave it. Like, leave it for a couple hours, go for a walk, take a break, drink some water, do everything that you need to do to just calm down. Because one thing is, you can't take away the message you send on Etsy. You can't. It's there and it's there. So the other thing is again, we don't necessarily say ChatGPT is not the way to do it, but how do you build your skill set? Do you just automate your response and give it to ChatGPT and have it just think for you? Or do you want to develop that skill set? And it's so important to develop it because that's how we've been able to navigate. And we'll talk about this later on. I know we keep saying that, but it's how we've been able to help train our team when we got to that point. And it's just so important to just be human. There's so much automation in this world that like, that's the beauty of the Etsy world is you get to still be human, which is so cool. I don't know how long that will last, but it's so beautiful to be able to do that for people all over the world, or, you know, just be able to talk to them as human beings. So we're just encouraging you guys to just lean into yourselves and building that skill set yourself, and take a break when you are in a heated moment. There's been times that we've gotten messages and I literally cannot believe the message that we get. And I'm like, this cannot be real. It sounds so silly, but there's just been times and we don't respond for, a couple hours until we're in a better space and mindset. So then we can help deliver to them, because ultimately they're escalated and your goal is to de-escalate that and then serve them. And that's the whole method for us, is how can we serve these people better than they've ever been served ultimately, even if it's just online. Yeah.
And I think just to give you guys like some very tactical advice, like a very specific situation. So I think one of the things that people deal with a lot and struggle with dealing with is shipping delays. And so shipping delays are absolutely inevitable during the Christmas season, no matter what carrier you're using. We ship most of our stuff with USPS, and during those Christmas seasons, it gets pretty crazy, right? USPS stops scanning packages. I have no idea how they get to the final destination, but it's very common to see.
Santa's sleigh, they do.
Right, maybe Santa's sleigh. But it's very common to see like the initial scan when the package gets picked up by the post office, and then not to see a scan until the item's out for delivery. And it may be all the way across the country. And so there's no updates in between. And if you reach out to USPS, they'll tell you, oh, the package hasn't been shipped. But then tomorrow, the next day, it'll say out for delivery 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea logistically how they do it. And what ends up happening is customers become very, very frustrated, because they may reach out to USPS and they may get the response, hey, your package hasn't been shipped. And they blame it on you as the seller. Like, you're lying to me. You didn't ship my package. And I think one of the things that's really helped us avoid those refunds because of that is, like we said, just being super honest with them and empathizing, like getting down on their level and be like, this is super frustrating for us as well. Like, we have tons and tons of customers going through this exact same situation, but rest assured, like shortly after they message us, the tracking updates and their package is out for delivery. And that's worked really well for us, where I know a lot of sellers have panicked in those moments and issued tons and tons of refunds when they didn't need to. They'll refund a product, and then a day later or 2 days later, the item arrives. And so the customer's left with a free item and you lost out on the order. And so I think that's just one example of being like very truthful, open and honest and empathizing to de-escalate the situation and keep the order ultimately, and keep
Yeah.
the customer happy.
And I think too, just going off of the shipping delays. So once it's in the postal service's hand, whatever carrier you're using, it is out of your control. In all honesty, it is. And so just noting that too, that like, hey, you know, like, yeah, this is super frustrating for me. Once we handed it over to the carrier, unfortunately, it's out of our control. We're seeing the same thing on our end, but rest assured, similar to what Connor said, it should be being delivered within the next couple of days. And 99% of the time that we've experienced that, the customer comes back a couple days later and goes, hey, my package arrived. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And of course, we're like, thank goodness, you know, and they're usually so happy. So, yeah, that's a real experience, and that's gonna happen. It's just reality. The postal service is just as overwhelmed as a lot of people are during the holidays, and
Yeah.
so, but just understanding that it is out of your control, and not feeling like you have to do a refund right then and there, because you did your part, and so the rest is up to the postal service or carrier to deliver it. And obviously there's issues that can come with that, but you know, things don't actually ever get delivered, they get lost in the mail. But the whole point of this is you don't take the blame for the carrier's issue, right? And so you don't automatically go to the safe route that you think is a refund, because it not only hurts you, but now that customer is still going to get their package, and now we're in a hurting spot. And so I just think it's really important that it's out of your control once it's in the carrier's hand, and just continue to have empathy with the customer that you're also frustrated with that, and you're doing what you can to help them, you know, get the information needed.
Yeah. And I think one other thing that we didn't have on our notes here, but I think is really important to highlight, that I see a lot of people struggle with and maybe not really understand as Etsy sellers. It's really not talked about, but it should be like a very low percentage of orders, less than 1%, like very less than 1%, that you ever issue a refund and take like the hit yourself as the business owner, as a print on demand seller. Like, you should never be doing that, and you should avoid it at all costs. And so if there's various situations and scenarios, but if there's a misprint, like say there was an issue with your print on demand supplier, like maybe there was a mix up, the wrong order was shipped to your customer, you should never cover that refund. Your print on demand company should cover that. That was their mistake. Same thing with like a broken item. Most print on demand companies cover broken items, and so they'll cover the refund. And so you as the seller should not be covering it for those situations. Delayed shipping is another example, right? So it was out of your hands. As long as you shipped the item on time, you should not be covering a refund. You should not be issuing a refund. If the package does arrive past the estimated delivery date of what Etsy shows when they place their order, Etsy actually covers that. And so it's an amazing program that Etsy has through their seller protection program. And so those are probably the three most common issues that come up: broken items, wrong items or misprints, and then delayed shipping. In all three of those instances, you as the seller, the print on demand seller, should not be covering that refund. And so what ends up happening is there may be refunds given, but it's not coming out of your pocket. And so I think a lot of sellers don't realize that, and they give away a lot of money.
Yeah. And it's detrimental. I mean, it's just obvious that it can derail your business, right? If you have a Q4 season, let's just say, for example, and it's doing really well, and then you're refunding 20% of those orders, well, that's not good, because now your income is going way down, right? And your profits. So yeah, it's super, super important. And I think the other thing, just going off of that before we move on, is when you get, it goes hand in hand with what we talked about. When you're heated in a moment and you get a message and you're freaking out and you're like in panic mode of either you're mad, you're upset, or whatever you're feeling. Same thing with those messages. When you get a message and a customer's like, I want a refund, or there's a misprint, or blah, whatever the issue could be. If you get anxiety from that and you're like stressed by that and you like panic mode and your instant reaction is, okay, I'll issue the refund. Like, take a step back. In all honesty, take the step back, revisit it with yourself in a little bit and be like, okay, what is practical here? Like, what actually needs to happen? Is this my issue that I've created for this customer, or is it a production issue, a shipping issue? And like 99% of the time, most of the time, it's not your issue.
Yeah.
Most of the time, unless it's an error on your end where you've done a customization wrong. Well, that's an obvious one. But take a step back. Like, if you get into that moment where you feel cornered and you don't know what to do, like, just take a step back. You don't have to instantly do something, and then you can't get that back. And so the goal here, and the point again of what we're talking about, is we want to help you guys not have to refund when it's not your fault or not in your control, essentially. And that's really the beauty of print on demand, is we don't have all that weight of, like, you know, a bunch of returns and all of that stuff where we have to issue a lot of those refunds and payment issues and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so important, and we see so many people struggle with it, and it just eats away at their profits. And so that's why it's so important. We're definitely team no refunds.
Yeah. I mean, like we said, we there's a time and place for it, but yeah, it's saved us during a couple of really busy seasons, and it was a very fruitful season for us because we were able to navigate it with how we, message our customers with transparency and empathy. I mean, it goes a heck of a long way. I'll tell you that.
So I think we talked a little bit about how you can, like, handle those tougher situations, and usually 99% of the time customers respond well. They can change their attitude. You can resolve a situation and just really serve them. But there is that 1% of customers that are just not fun to deal with, right? And so you're going to get those mean messages. You're going to get those people who tell you you're the worst person ever, that you ruin their life.
And their Christmas or Mother's Day or whatever.
And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that. We've touched on it a little, but we wanted to go a little bit deeper and just share our approach to those types of customers.
Yeah. So again, this is something that we've developed. It was a very hard thing to navigate because I really didn't know people could be this rude or put this much like it's your fault. And I'm a people pleaser naturally. So when we saw those messages, it like completely wrecked me. I just was like, I don't even know this person, but I feel like I need to like conquer the world for them. But after some time, and again, like I said before, it still stings. That does not change for us. We still feel those messages. But I think the biggest thing that we've learned and matured in is, one, where are those people at? Like, again, it's taking that step back and recognizing that this is a person, and whatever could be going on in their life. It could be this issue that we're talking about with the order, but it also could be a mountain of other things going on. And this was just, the cherry on top to everything else. And they know you're a person. They're going to take it out on you. And that's just, it's unfortunate. And again, we are with those people and understand that that's a really difficult position. But the biggest thing I think that we've really approached and continue to do in our business and with anyone we communicate with the best that we can is give them grace. That's just the method to it for us, is empathize, understand where they're at. It could be super hurtful, but empathize with them and give them a lot of grace and just, wish them the best and Merry Christmas if that's what you want to say. And yeah, just don't continue to feed it. Yeah. Try to give them, even though it's just messages and you're not seeing your face, give them the chance to see like there is light in the situation, whatever it is. You could change their whole day with how you respond. And to me, that's a win. Like, forget the order. If you can help change that person's perspective and their energy and what they're saying to you, just with how kind you can respond with grace and empathy, I mean, write me off for the day. Yeah. It's a huge win. So
yeah, I talked about it a little earlier during that season when I first stepped away from my job, and how those messages can really just like derail your day and be so discouraging, because they really can be like so hateful and so mean. Like, if you haven't experienced it yet, you probably will. And I know we're just talking about messages back and forth, but it does sting. It really does. And I think, like Lauren said, the best that you can, like, handle it with grace, give them the grace that they deserve. And yeah, that's the best you can do. Sometimes you need to step away from it and like not be heated in the moment, like we've said, and respond in a peaceful way.
I always try to
on.
think of like them stepping on like a thorn, and you're the person that gets to help solve that, or at least shed some light on it. And obviously you'd be heated if you stepped on a thorn. That's never something fun.
Yeah.
But just trying to like, again, be in their shoes. We really just, that's the biggest thing, is we try to be in our customers' shoes. And yeah, there were some really, really awful messages that we got.
Definitely.
I mean,
and still do from
Yeah.
time to time. But I think one of the things that's really helped us over time is creating policies for our business. And not only, so policies you can create in your Etsy shop, like formal policies that are also very important, that you can fall back on and point customers to, like, hey, this is my policy, this is why I do X, Y, and Z. But also like internal policies for your own business. And what do you do with all the different scenarios, all the different situations that can come up, and document those policies, right, in a formal way, right, so that when those scenarios do come up, you can fall back on those policies. And by doing that, it allows you to somewhat remove yourself from the situation and make it not as personal as maybe it feels in the moment, but fall back on that policy. And I think it took us a while to get to that point to realize that. But as we started to think about eventually hiring a team of people to help us with our Etsy shops, and as we started to bring on people to help us with the orders in our shops, we had the intention or the goal eventually to have them help with the messages as well. And so it became very important for us to start to document those policies and start to utilize them ourselves, right? It's kind of a dry run. Like, okay, the intention is someone else is going to do this for us later on. If this message came in, how would they know what to do? And so by developing those policies, it's allowed us to kind of remove ourselves from the situation, not take it as personal, but also step into the season where now we've been able to train our virtual assistants, our team members, to handle the customer service. And we wanted to talk about that in a little more detail, because I think it's important. It's the ideal scenario where you can remove yourself, but also continue to grow your business, continue to have that good interaction, that good customer service coming from your business.
Do you want to talk about any of the policies?
I think like we kind of touched on some of them. So certain things, like the things you want to outline in your policies are like those different scenarios we talked about. Like, what do you do when there's a misprint? How do you handle that? What do you do when the wrong item was sent? How do you handle that? What are the different options? How do you handle delayed shipping? How do you handle like package says delivered, but it isn't delivered? Like customer doesn't have the package. Like, think of all those different scenarios that you've dealt with as an Etsy seller and start to document and come up with policies and different procedures that you would follow. And you'll probably go through a period where you're continuously editing this document that you form as more and more situations come up. But I think it's really important sooner than later, like, start to document those things and start to form those procedures and policies for yourself, so that eventually you can hand it off to someone and they can pick it up and hit the ground running and know exactly what to do in all the different situations and scenarios.
Yeah, and it also just makes your life a lot easier too. I remember, maybe it was Mother's Day or Christmas, I don't remember, but I remember we had this ongoing customer service like list of things that we went through over time, and it was really so helpful for us because if I got stuck on something and I got frustrated or whatever, or vice versa, we would look at it and be like, okay, well, how do we handle that? Like, kind of just brings you back and recenters you and is like, okay, well, this is what we do and this is what we're going to do. And you can react how you want. But ultimately, it takes you out of it being personal to you, like Connor was saying. And so, yeah, it is super important. And it did help us a ton when we had our team members start to take over that customer service. It was really helpful, and we still can add to it. It's a fluid document that we can still add to.
Yeah. And so we wanted to touch a little bit more on how that's gone for us, like eventually handing off that responsibility to our team members. And so it's been fairly recent. This year is when we did hand off that customer service responsibility. So like I said, last Christmas, 2024, we were still handling it all. Our team member, we felt like wasn't at the point where they were ready to take on that responsibility with all the order volume that they were dealing with. And so one of our goals coming into this year was to train them on that customer service so that they could take the bulk of that responsibility for the majority of this year and then heading into the Christmas season. And those policies that we've been talking about, that document that has all those procedures, that's been super helpful in making that transition. And I think it can be really scary at first, right? And it was for us, because what you're ultimately doing is you're now giving someone else like direct access to interfacing with your customers. And so now they're front facing with your customer. They're having those interactions which impact your business, right? The perception, the brand that you've built. And how are you going to ensure that they are graceful in those interactions with your customer, just like you've tried to be, right? They're not necessarily the owners of the business. And so they likely don't care as much as you. That's just natural, I think. But how do you ensure that they still handle those situations in a respectful, timely way, in a graceful way? And yeah, I think we've thought a lot about that, and it's been really important for us.
Yeah, and I think just the work that we did for ourselves, we ultimately were serving ourselves, right, to help optimize our plan, our process of what we were doing. And then we just made it, we sharpened it so that we could hand the policies and the process to our team, so that it was, here you go, like, this is what we do. And it's been really helpful. There's not been many questions with that since we created that. And so the reason we're even talking about that, and if you're not at that point where you're developing a team, it doesn't matter. We just started to develop a team. So it's not like we've been doing this for 5 years with a team. Okay. We've been, through the trenches, and, a lot of hard work has gone into that. But the goal and the point of what we're saying here is start to serve yourself as much as you're serving your customers, right? And so serve yourself in the sense of equipping your business and you with policies that you can just follow. Maybe you can copy and paste them. Maybe you can adjust them, but you're not having to sit there and rethink of the whole process over and over and over again. If someone's like, where's my package? Why is it delayed? You're not sitting there retyping the whole thing. Yep. And so, it not only serves you, but if you decide to go the route of eventually developing a team, it serves them a lot too. And it also eliminates a lot of back and forth conversation of, hey, what do I say here? What do I say here? What do you say here? And I think that we also developed that skill naturally because we both were in it. But still, you can do that as one person running a shop. You can do that as two people, whatever it is, you can still do that. And we'd encourage it because it really streamlined a lot of things, and the time was a lot less.
Yeah. And I think just to give you guys some peace of mind, if you are eventually thinking about hiring someone, and we did a whole episode on virtual assistants, which if you guys haven't seen, you can go back and watch that. But our experience has been our team members are actually probably better at customer service than we are. Yeah. They're just the way that they respond in that graceful way and are so professional, but still human and personalized and all that goes into good customer service. And I think what's important there is that was one of the things we looked for early on when we were hiring that first person. Was we felt like customer service experience was really important, and that was definitely something that was on his experience level when we did end up hiring him. So it's a real skill that he already had coming in, and he's really been able to shine as we've given him that responsibility.
Yeah, and I think since he naturally had that ability, which that's like Connor said, we were looking for that. We were just able to equip him to be even stronger at it. And so it wasn't like we threw him into the deep end and he learned how to just navigate and respond. It was, hey, you have this skill, but we're going to help empower you even more with the policies and this guide that we've created for you. And so you make sure it's similar to this, but you can put your own twist on it because you have that skill set. Yep. And so it's been really cool to see. And in fact, when we see the messages, it's like, oh, maybe we weren't as great as we thought we were, which it's really cool. There's a lot of powerful people out there that have a lot of skills, and we're just grateful for that. So ultimately, this isn't about the virtual assistants and team members. It's just how can you equip yourself and eventually a team if you decide to go that route.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I thought of that we didn't put on our list here to talk about, but I think we should bring it up since we were talking so much about like the bad customer experiences. One that comes to mind that I just remembered was last Christmas, there was a message, and you actually ended up dealing with it, but it was a customer who ordered, I think, a cancer order.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just a really cool story. And so I think we've talked a lot about like the bad side of it and how stressful and overwhelming it can be, but there also can be some like really cool experiences that you get to have with customers that you wouldn't necessarily get to have if you were just selling on Amazon or somewhere else where you don't get those interactions. And so, yeah, do you want to maybe share some of that story?
Yeah, so there's this customer that came to us, and it was a Christmas ornament. It was a cancer one, and her husband came in and just approached it in such a way that I was just astonished, like in a very grateful, beautiful way. I just was like, wow, like this man has such a perspective. Again, this is a customer I've never met. It was literally a message. and anyways, what ended up happening was he ordered this cancer, cancer-free ornament, and he put a future year. And
2025.
Yeah, 2025.
When it was 2024.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay, like, cool. So I messaged him. I'm like, hey, just wanted to double check, like, the year was right. And his response was what floored me. And I was just like, wow, this is so powerful. And he's like, yeah, my wife currently has this very rare cancer, but it's giving me chills talking about it, but I want to put 2025 because that's the year she's going to beat it. And I was like, dude, everything that was bad that day or whatever was going on that whole season, I was like, okay, like that is amazing. And so long story short, I kept in touch with this guy outside of the order. He got the order. Things were great. But I just kept thinking about this family, and I was like, that just impacted me to the core. And I just kept in touch with them over time, and I was like, hey, I'm just thinking of you guys, like praying for you, like hope things are going well. And he'd give me updates, and there was no transactional any conversation about like that. It was very like, hey, I just am letting you know, like I'm thinking about you. And I remember we were in Florida in April this year, 2025. And was
probably like 6 months.
Yeah. And I had messaged him a couple times, but I wanted to respect his space and the whole process. It's not an easy one. And I just messaged him. I was like sitting in the car, and for some reason something came to my mind, and I was like, I wonder how they're doing. And so I just searched in the messages and I found them, and I just reached out. I'm like, hey, like just thinking of you guys, like been praying for you. Just wanted to check in, see how things are going. Just very checking in. And he came back, and it was the coolest thing ever. He came back and he was like, my wife is doing so great. She went through the trenches of it. She's doing great. She has her final scan on, I don't know, the next week. And I was like, whoa, like, this is so cool. Like, now we have this connection. And so he told me the date of when his wife's scan was. And I was like, we'll be praying for you guys. Like, you have a whole village of prayer happening around you. And, anyways, what ended up happening was I messaged him like, hey, just checking in, like, hope this, praying the scan went well. And he replied and she was cancer free. And I was like, it's all worth it. Like, that is all worth it to me. Like, the business is great, but like, you can't make that up. Like, that is so powerful. I've never met this family, this man. We've never met them. I don't even care if I meet them. The whole point of it was that, like, you pay attention to those people and you pay attention to those orders, and you might be in the trenches of what's going on in the season. But ultimately, like, if you can pay attention to that and you can connect with someone like that, it impacted my life beyond what I could ever thought. And I've never even met these people. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it was just so cool. The ornament brought her to tears. Everyone was just so ecstatic, and it was just such a beautiful moment. And yeah, I don't even care if they ever order from us again. It was the best moment. It was the highlight of the whole business, quite honestly, thus far.
Yeah. It's such a cool experience. Yeah. And yeah, I'm glad we remembered to bring that up.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Because there is a lot of light and a lot of good that can come out of it. You often deal with and focus really on the negatives and how do you improve those. But there can be some really cool situations that come out of the interactions you can have with the customers virtually through Etsy. And so, yeah, I'm glad we brought that up. So the next thing we wanted to share just some, I think, like random tips and tricks that you guys can potentially use. And so I think the first thing, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but with the policies and the customer service guide that you can start to develop over time to reference yourself and then eventually your team. One way to like streamline your customer service is Etsy allows you to set up these snippets, which are like pre-saved messages. And so different than the automated messages, right? We talked about automated messages where those will be sent automatically, but the snippets allow you to pre-save some of those blurbs of text or responses that you commonly use for all those different scenarios and situations. And so that's been really helpful for us, and it's really helped streamline that process where, an order, there's a misprint or an order is delayed, you can start with that snippet. So majority of the text is already there for you, and then you can customize it and personalize it for that specific customer. And so that's just a little tip or trick that you guys can use to help speed up that process. And it's a really great feature.
Yeah, and that's something that we did when it was us doing the customer service. So again, that's for anybody. It's for people that are just starting. It's for people that are in the middle of it. It's for wherever you're at. It's a great resource, and it helped us, and it can help you with that quick response time. What we ended up doing with our snippets that Connor said or just talked about was we put the most, the frequently asked questions typically. We put those in there knowing that, hey, we've seen these so many times. How can we quickly reply to these without text or writing it 5 times, Yeah. And so you can develop that. You could put just one thing in there where it's like, thank you so much. Like whatever it is to help you ease your process. But we still use it today. I mean, it's really helpful. And like Connor said, it gets you started. Especially if you're blanking on what to say, at least gets you started with something. So highly encourage those if you want to use them. They're just in your Etsy messages, and you can just add your own little things.
Yeah, definitely. So the next thing is turning bad reviews into 5-star reviews, into good situations. And so if you do have a customer who leaves a bad review, maybe they didn't message you beforehand, but it gives you a huge, instead of looking at it as like a negative, like, oh, this is going to hurt my shop, this is going to hurt my star seller status or the potential of getting a star seller badge, try and change your perspective. Those 1-star reviews are like your biggest opportunity for a good customer interaction. And so oftentimes we do this all the time where we're able to flip reviews around through exceptional customer service, right? Going up above and beyond and resolving that issue, whatever that means for the customer. And then like being very open with them, like explicitly asking like, hey, would you guys mind like revising your review and sending them the link?
Yep.
Like, this is how you would do it, and making it really easy for them and saying like, it really has a big impact on our business, right? As a small business, the reviews mean a lot. And would you guys mind updating your review? And usually, like I'd say 9 times out of 10, when we do have that interaction and we're able to resolve the issue, we can flip those reviews back to a 5-star. And so I think that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done that many times now. And I will just know it does sting. Okay. It does sting when you get the 1-star, 2-star, whatever star, if it's on a 5. Okay. It still does sting. But I think the biggest thing is changing your perspective and how can you eliminate it. However, there are some instances you just can't. It is what it is. And we just have to move on. But there are a lot of times where you can go back and you can flip it and you can serve them more and you can provide a solution, and it's night and day. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is check your reviews. Don't let it get you down. And come up with a solution. Like, how can you solve that? How can you serve them better? And yeah, it flips them around.
Yeah. And a lot of times they'll mention that in the review, which in my mind is like the ultimate review, where it's like there was an issue with my order, but the customer was so quick in responding and they resolved it and my experience was amazing. I'll absolutely be back. Like, that's the best review you can get, right? Because that gives people the confidence if they have an issue with their order, it's going to be made right. And so yeah, I think it's so important.
And I think it also just shows the customer that you care. I mean, we know that you guys care and we care, but it's going that extra mile, reviewing your reviews and reaching out to them, even though it's frustrating. Again, it's putting yourself in their shoes and serving them and having empathy and just giving a solution if you can. So, yeah.
And same thing, maybe they haven't even left a review yet. Sometimes the customer will be nice enough to reach out via message beforehand, and they likely would leave a bad review, but they give you that opportunity to make it right. And you can do the same thing, like turn a bad situation into a really good situation. And in our experience, like, those customers are way more likely to actually leave a review in the end, right? If you do resolve that situation, like if the order was perfect, they got exactly what they want, they may just forget about it and never take the time to leave a review. But if something goes wrong and you step in and provide exceptional customer service and give them the time of day and make it the top priority in their minds, they're way more likely to leave that review, which is also very important.
Yeah.
So the next tip we wanted to talk about was a scenario of order upgrades and how you can avoid potential refunds and issues with that. So what I mean by that is there's going to be instances in the orders that you guys get where you'll have a customer order something and then they may message you shortly after and say, hey, I meant to order 2 more, or I want to order 3 more of this. Like, how can I do that? Or they say, maybe they ordered and they're like, I'd like to upgrade my shipping. How do I do that? And so what we see a lot of people do, and what we did very frequently early on, is oftentimes we would refund those orders and just have them reorder, right? So it's nice and clean. It all comes in one order, refund that single order, and then they can order a new order with 3 or 4 more, whatever they wanted, or with the upgraded shipping. And I think what we've found is probably about 50% of the time, way higher than you would think, the customers disappear. They don't order again. And so you lose the order. And so to avoid that, one of the things we found is nowadays we never refund in that scenario, right? If they're still wanting the order, obviously, but they want to add to it, we don't refund that original order, because what we found, there's a high chance that they just disappear and you lose the order. And so what we do is have these add-on listings where customers will basically pay the additional money or fee for the upgrade of the order for the additional products, and then like manually complete those orders when the first original order ships. And so that's been really important for us to keep those orders, I think.
Yeah, and that's just encouraging for you guys too, is when you get into more like peak seasons. Again, if you're newer to it, it's something to keep on the horizon for yourself. Or if you're in it right now where you're like, I need to figure that out, serve yourself and put that listing out there and have them at it, and it will avoid a lot of issues for yourself and losing money and all that fun stuff. So learn from us, because that's what we used to do, and we're like, what is happening? Like, how do we avoid this? And so yeah, that's the solution that we've figured out, and it's worked really well for us, and the customers respond super great. They're like, awesome, thanks, just paid, and everyone's happy. So yeah, definitely take that from us. We learned that in a fun way before.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's probably various reasons why they don't come back and order. It's probably because I would think the main reason is they don't get the refund, reimbursement on their card or to their bank account immediately when you issue a refund. It like goes through Etsy's processing, and it'll take like 2 to 3 business
hours.
Days. Yeah, and so they may wait for that and then kind of forget about it and then feel like, oh, it's too late. I'll get something else. And so, yeah, just another reason not to do that. So I think that pretty much wraps up our customer service episode here. It's a super important topic. Like we said, one of the most important topics, and one of the best ways that you can stand out in your shop. But I think it's one of the things that people just don't talk about that often. And we feel like it's an area where we've really stood out from other shops and excelled and been able to really grow and have a very successful Etsy business.
I think just the last thing before we wrap up is, and this is key too to help with customer service, is making sure that you, what do we talk about? Under promise, but over deliver. It's super important for business. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we can touch on it and then we can wrap up. So I think what we mean by that is pretty straightforward, right? So especially when talking about delivery dates, I think is where it applies most frequently. You need to be really careful not to promise delivery dates as an Etsy seller, especially as a print-on-demand seller, when you don't necessarily have control when things ship, when things are going to get delivered, how long they're going to take to get delivered. And so these days we're very careful to never promise a delivery date, just so that we don't set those expectations and then have an upset customer because we said it was going to get there. And so I think in general, our approach now is like under promise, never commit to a specific date that something's going to arrive. And then when it arrives early, everyone's happy, right? And it's a great experience.
And it also, again, goes hand in hand with not having to refund, right? Because you haven't promised them a delivery date, especially because shipping's out of your control. So just not guaranteeing a deadline date is really important. And we found a lot of value in it for our business.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So now this officially wraps up this episode for customer service. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more episodes. We definitely have more podcasts coming. And if you guys like this episode, leave a comment down below. Thank you.
Thanks.